Good morning, ladies. My name is Belinda Chapman. I'm the host of the Compassionate Women's Health community here on Facebook and Be Kinder to Yourself Therapies on YouTube. This morning, we're joined by Lauren Patterson, who's going to share with us her personal HerStory. So when this goes to air, it will be falling within Perinatal Mental Health Week from the 6th to the 12th of November here in Australia. So I know Lauren's quite open about her experience in this space, so I asked her to come along and share with us some of her mental health history, and she's a very strong advocate for this, so I'm really excited to be talking to Lauren. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let me allow us to introduce Lauren a bit more formally. So Lauren's a mum of three. She's a personal trainer, online coach, and mental health DV speaker and writer. She shares that she has a long history of depression and anxiety after toxic high school relationship in her teens. She herself experienced postnatal depression after her second and third children. And she spent years as a single parent, which taught her just how strong she was and that she can overcome anything. And I'm sure you're not alone in that as well, Lauren. So I know your story is going to resonate with so many women in our community. So over to you. Can you please share your women's health story, particularly in relation to that perinatal mental health?
Sure. Well, obviously my mental health history, as you said, started when I was a teenager with domestic violence. And that pretty much lasted until I became a mum. I was very much confident that I wouldn't live much past my 21st birthday, but I fell pregnant not too long after that. And I've always seen, becoming a mother was something I never thought would happen to me. And I'm so, so grateful that it did.
Yeah.
And after I had my first, the relationship was never fantastic, but I got out of that pregnancy and felt amazing. I was settling into motherhood quite well, and as turbulent as motherhood can be sometimes, it was a lot of fun and I loved it. And had my second, and all of a sudden I was not sleeping. I had not experienced this with my first child. I was so sleep deprived, having a 3-year-old on top of that.
Yeah.
The combination, I just began crying every day and couldn't handle everyday things. I thought I was looking at my children going, I love these little humans so much, but why am I so sad? I don't get it. And obviously, because I had experienced such severe depression as a teenager, I was like, oh, shit. Oh, no, here we go. And, I hadn't really been geared up to know what postnatal depression was. I just knew that I was severely depressed once again. So, back to the doctors and tried medication again. But just as when I was a teenager, medication worked for me, and that's what I needed. But when I was a mum and when I started taking again, I was like, there's something just doesn't feel right. And I did not feel like myself. So I started looking at other things in my life, like what is causing such deep unhappiness that could be contributing to what I'm feeling right now. And, ultimately, and unfortunately, that meant going out on my own as a single mum. So in the midst of being in the middle of postnatal depression, I went through a separation, went out on my own with the kids. We moved into this tiny shoebox apartment, pretty much the only thing that I could possibly afford, and started to rebuild my life from there. And, I don't really remember, all of a sudden having a feeling like I don't have postnatal depression anymore, but I changed so many circumstances in my life that I just felt happy and myself again.
Yeah, amazing.
And, went through some things in the next couple of years, as you do as a single parent. It's a roller coaster. But, I did become the best version of myself throughout that, the strongest version as well. I then found my now fiance, who we had a child. He's 2 next week. And Coop's not really let us sleep too much in those 2 years. In the beginning, severely sleep deprived once again. I had PTSD as well, which I was diagnosed with during my pregnancy.
Okay.
And within my pregnancy, I was actually seeing a social worker, a therapist. I was really working hard on my mental health.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that PTSD really, I think, took away the enjoyment of what I thought was going to be like the magical movie type pregnancy that I'd always wanted.
Yeah.
So, looking after my mental health during that was kind of like a prevention plan for postnatal depression afterwards. But you know what? As hard as I worked, it was just kind of inevitable because there were so many things for me to work through. And with the sleep deprivation, and my body, in my 30s now, I had my first two when I was, in my early 20s. So bodies don't respond to pregnancy the same way.
No.
Age does come into it. So yeah, with, my PTSD and sleep deprivation, this new body, I was swollen and sore, and I just did not feel myself at all. So I started feeling these common things that I'd felt in the past. And I was like, oh, it's bitten me again. It was probably more so anxiety this time around, that it was crippling, bedridden anxiety that would take weeks off me, unfortunately. And, I'm only just starting to come out of it by adapting and changing things in my life to kind of help myself cope with it. So yeah, it's a roller coaster when it comes to postnatal depression. And you know what, once I started speaking about it was kind of like I'd say to a mum, oh yeah, I've got postnatal, and they go, oh, me too. Or like when you say you see a therapist. So once you start opening it up, it's like your energy starts attracting the people that understand it. And it's quite heartwarming in the most odd way. It's so heartwarming.
Yeah, it's so important to know that we're not alone. We're a tribal species. I'm actually reading a book at the moment called Lost Connections on Depression.
Okay.
And the very first connection that he talks about that we've lost that can lead to depression is that disconnection from society and our community.
Yeah.
So those moments that you probably feel quite vulnerable doing it initially, reaching out and letting people know that this is where I'm at, is that connection to someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for those who might have heard of postnatal, perinatal, antenatal depression, anxiety, so do you mind sharing a little bit more about what your day-to-day sort of symptoms and experiences were that led you to go, oh, here I am again, or okay, this is now enough that I really feel I need to reach out for support?
Yeah, for sure. I just remember this deep sadness that I couldn't shake. It was like it was a physical thing that I was feeling every single day, and it was taking over my mind as well. I just lost the ability to think positively and find enjoyment in things. So, I became a personal trainer to help myself with my mental health after becoming a single mom. And I just, especially after Coop, I didn't want to. I would use the excuse of, oh, he'll probably wake up in 3 seconds anyway. Like, why even bother trying? And, going for a walk, I felt I was so self-conscious of this new body. I felt I probably had body dysmorphia. I just didn't want to be looked at. So I didn't want to leave the house. And, I'd probably go, unless I had to pick the kids up from school or drop them at school, I probably wasn't leaving the house.
Yeah.
And I was not me. I wasn't a nice person to be around because I was so sad. I cried every day. Oh gosh, I would have some days where I didn't eat anything. And then some days I would eat everything.
Yeah.
And I just wore baggy shirts and track pants, and you don't wash your hair, and yeah, I felt like most of the time that I spent while Koopy was such a little baby was me so desperately trying to get him to sleep and not enjoying this newborn that I had.
Yeah.
Most of it was based around, please, for the love of God, just please sleep.
Yeah.
So I can sleep and I can feel human. And when I think back, I didn't really enjoy those first couple of months because I was struggling so much with my own mental health and had been in that pregnancy. And to be honest, and I'll be completely frank, I got induced with Koopy. We got to 38 weeks and I said, I'm so sorry, I cannot do this pregnancy mentally anymore. And I need to be induced. And I just looked at the doctor. I'm like, you can ask my social worker, you can ask my therapist. I'm completely sound of mind when I ask you, this is what I need. I knew that I needed that. And when he was here, it was so much better. I just had so many things to deal with. And, you know, it did hit me like a ton of bricks pretty quickly after that.
Yeah. It's such a, and that first 3 months with a newborn, it's the 4th trimester. It's tough.
It is. And you know what? I normally say to people now, like, you never want to scare someone when they're pregnant and be like, hey, look after your mental health while you're pregnant. And, you know, as well as packing your baby bag, have something ready to go for your mental health too, just in case. There's so many people that have no history of mental health or challenges or anything like that, and it hits them like a big bag of bricks, and they've got no coping mechanisms. So it's starting from scratch. And I think it's so important for every single mum out there just to have something in their back pocket if they do start experiencing symptoms that they just know in their own body is just not them and it's not right. It's really important. I don't think it's stressed enough in, you know, doctor's appointments and antenatal appointments. It definitely should be something that should be in the baby book that you tick off.
I know. Yeah, that next phase when you, I watched a TED talk on it called matrescence. You know, we have pubescence when we're becoming adults, but matrescence, it's a phase. We're suddenly this whole new role with this tiny, like, helpless little human that you are 100% responsible for. It's massive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember, so my lead up, you might have seen on my stories, was IVF. So, and I finally had my baby after 3.5 years. And I thought I would be able to sail through on gratitude, but it was still tough.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, the minute you breathe a word of I'm struggling or something, normally it is met with, just be grateful. Just be grateful. There's so many mums out there that don't have children that would love to be in your position. And then you feel like, sorry for mentioning that I myself am struggling. And I mean, everyone's story is so different. And it's,
so unique. That's it. No, I get that. Like, I get all the before and the after, the during, it's really, really tough. And I hear what you were saying before as well about that level of information to give someone. I talk about it with, you know, I talk to women who have endometriosis, PCOS, infertility. There's this point where you need enough information that you feel informed to be able to make a decision. And then there's this point beyond which you almost get scared because you're like, holy shit, it could be that. So I haven't found that perfect balance yet. And I think it's almost like you give just enough so that they know that there's something that's going to change. It's going to be something that's different. And then if they need more, they know where to come to get more.
Oh, yeah. All the time. You know, your friends will say, oh gosh, why didn't you tell me this? Or why didn't someone just say this? And it's like, well, I didn't want to scare you. I'm here for you now that it's happening, but I wasn't going to tell you about it beforehand because I wanted you to experience yourself. Like,
I know. It's like that with birth stories, isn't it? Like,
absolutely. Excuse me. You know, birth stories is a whole different kettle of fish when it comes to
I know, we won't go there.
No.
There's other professionals that can take women down that path. So what, thank you so much for sharing like that day today. I know it's really hard to sort of reflect back and go there. But just sharing now, like, what do you think was out of all of that history, that decade or so of history, what was the biggest challenge for you?
You know what? I think the biggest challenge would have been, I've been through depression through two different, I guess, stages. And, you know, when I was younger and a teenager, it was just something that was not talked about, especially in high school. You know, I kind of, when I was first diagnosed, I was sitting by the pool with my dad, and I just turned around. I'm like, does this just mean I'm sad all the time now? Like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And it wasn't talked about. I feel like I felt like I couldn't tell my friends. And you know what, when I did get to the head of like the worst part of it, I did lose many friends because no one understood my behavior and my sadness and the extremes that I was taking to try and cope with life. And then, you know, once I was diagnosed with postnatal depression, which was, I guess, like 6-7 odd years later, it was a different world when it comes to the stigma around mental health. So it was a completely different kettle of fish. And I started blogging throughout my pregnancy with my second child because I just wanted an outlet. And I've always been a bit of a writer. So I just started writing about my mental health when I was a teenager, thinking, you know, I'd never imagined that someone would read it. It was more as a therapeutic thing for myself.
Yeah.
And I guess the honesty around my mental health was something that wasn't, I guess, there wasn't too much of it online, and social media was becoming, I guess, a bigger thing back then. And people received it so well, and they felt heard and not alone. And I started connecting with people who had experienced the same things. And not once in my life before had I spoken to someone who could go, me too. I hadn't been there before. And it was just this whole different world, which I thought, wow, there's something here. There's something with my story that people need, and there's something from everyone else's story that the world needs as well. So it's so crazy that throughout both of those, funnily enough, you still feel like a burden. Like I felt like a burden when I was a teenager, which is why I did attempt on my life. And, you know, you don't want to put anyone else through the shit as well. Yeah. So when I was a mum, you know, going through it twice now and once on my own, and obviously I've got a partner now, I thought, oh, my experiences in the past haven't been the greatest. So I'm not going to tell Chris how I'm feeling. But it was all over my face. Yeah. I was crying all the time. You can hide it. Yeah. And he would say to me, I don't understand, but I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect response. Yeah. Even though sometimes I wanted to shake him and go, you know, we have the baby and then you go back to work and life goes pretty much back to what you were used to anyway. Yeah. And for me, who was used to working so much, I'm like, I've lost my identity here. I've lost my sleep and I'm like going crazy. So I think the hardest part was not this time around, obviously like third time around, I was scared to lose him because I didn't want my mental health to be a burden.
Yeah.
And that's something I've experienced in the past. And although when you think you're a burden, it's pretty much your head telling you a whole bunch of lies.
Yeah.
And, you know, now that I'm out of that dark period, it's kind of like if someone doesn't respond well to you opening up to them, they're just not the right person to be opening up to. Yeah. And not every single person will be able to, will be in a position to be able to listen to you. And, you know, you're not always going to be understood either. So I think that's the hardest thing, was owning it. When, I guess if you sum it up, it's feeling like a burden and just owning it and trying to move through it with the right people so you don't feel like a burden.
Yeah, for sure. there's so many things in what you're saying around my understanding when I work with people in the hypnotherapy space in their subconscious mind. That belief that you're a burden, it would have been set up at some point to protect you. Like there would be a positive intention behind it somewhere, protecting you, self-preservation on some level. And it's so hard to have that juxtaposition of this rational mind going, I know Chris loves me, and I know I've got this amazing child and this, this amazing family and community, but there's this subconscious part of me, a belief that beneath the surface that's so powerful and so biological and so strong that's just heading me down this direction.
Yeah. And you also think that you're protecting everyone else by not telling them too, because then, it's just kind of like, okay, if I just stay like this, then nothing can hurt me. But that's how mold forms.
Yeah, that's right. So what were some of the kindest things that people have done for you in each of these experiences?
Oh gosh, it just kind of got me a little bit choked up. In the hardest stages, something as simple as someone smiling at you at the shops, or a really friendly retail person, which doesn't happen very often these days, would really make my day.
Yeah.
And when I was a single mum and dealing with mental health and postnatal, I used to buy myself flowers every Friday, and I would get them delivered to me, and I'd write a card to me.
Amazing.
Saying, Lauren, you're going to be just fine.
That's awesome.
And, the flower people got to know me soon enough. So if there was a Friday that I didn't send myself flowers, they started filling in the blanks. So
wow.
It was really, really, really nice. I probably did that for like 18 months or so.
Yeah.
And then I went through some financial stuff and couldn't afford to send myself flowers every Friday. But that was just like, I had so much power in myself to make myself happy. And when I felt like I had the energy to do so, I would do everything I could myself. Power all starts with us. But in terms of like other people, sometimes you realize that you cannot put your happiness in anyone else because everyone else is so worried about themselves, which is totally fine. But it was the little things. And that's why I stress to the kids, and I do it myself, smile at the strangers. If someone lets us go past the pedestrian crossing, give them a wave and a smile. That person in the car could be having the worst day, and you shoot them a smile, and then it's like, okay, there's decent people in the world. Oh, that's getting me choked up. Smiling and kindness, I swear to God, it could turn someone's entire day around, whether you know that person or not. And it's just smiling counts.
Yeah. Well, I think anyone who follows your Instagram account would receive the bits of sunshine that you share regularly. Like, the giggles when you're with Cooper in those happy moments, and that your big bright smile when you share your little reels. It's really special. So thank you for what you offer back to your community.
Thank you. I'm really lucky that over the years, I never planned Instagram and how it worked out. But it all came from sharing my story and just being vulnerable. And I've always wanted to create a safe space where no one feels judged, and you can just kind of be encouraged to be yourself, no matter what, and just own it. If you're a single mom, own it. Like, I don't think enough single moms get encouraged to just own it and rock it. And mums in general, just seeing them find themselves, and whether that means going back to work and having your own sort of identity, like no matter what, if it makes you happy as a mum, do it.
Well, it has a ripple effect, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And most of my friends these days, like my best friends I've met through Instagram, who like I've bumped into at the shops, and then they've become a client of mine, and then we're just best friends from there. And it's all these people that, I've put a certain energy out, and that's attracted people that are pretty much every single one of my friends is a co-parent, has been separated, and it is now like moved on, new children, new partner. That's pretty much all my friends. So they've all been through the same thing as me, and that's so wonderful. And you know, every single person that I talk through social media is so grateful for things that I do that I just think are just normal. And it's so nice to connect with these people. And, you know, people might look and go, oh, she's got X amount of followers, but like, mate, I get lonely as fuck sometimes. Like, I am so about quality, not quantity, when it comes to friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm so fine with being on my own as well, but getting to connect with the mums out there that are feeling lonely and think that there's something wrong with them because they're feeling lonely. It's like, nah, you got me. It's cool. Even though it's through the phone. I would hate for a mum to be sitting there feeling like she's on her own and she doesn't have anyone, because she always does. Always.
Yeah. No, I love how genuine you are. You are just like, you can tell you're not doing it because there's an audience. Like, you genuinely want to share this, and that's what that really shines through. So it's awesome.
Thank you.
Love it.
My coach always says, just think about that one person who needs you. That one person. She's like, even if more people need it, good. But she's like, just think about the one and stick with that. So that's how I always kind of think.
Yeah, awesome. So if you were to have yourself from many years ago sitting in front of you now, what advice would you give her?
This question chokes me up every time, and I think I haven't been able to answer it one time in my life without crying. I would probably just give her a big cuddle, and here we go. I'd probably give her a big cuddle, and for a bit of a laugh, just say boys ain't shit, because that's where everything stemmed from, I guess. And instead of her giving up, which I tried to so many times, I'd probably say, you're going to do really epic things in the future, so keep going. Yep. Okay. I've officially been consistent with the way I answer that question. I always cry. I think when I do answer that question, I think, what if Maddie was me, my eldest and my only girl? I always think, what would I tell her?
Yeah.
And I pray to God she never gets into the position and the situations that I was in my teens that, you know, I guess kind of shaped my life to what it is now. And I think that's why I struggle with that question sometimes, because I just, like, I'll be there for her because I'll treat her like the miniature version of myself in the past. Yeah. But it gets me every time.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. It's really, you know, what advice do you have for others? It's when you frame it up, because that's who you're talking to, isn't it? Like, that's who you're helping, is who you were all those years ago.
Yeah.
Who needed that support, who needed that help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Amazing. Was there anything that we didn't cover today that you feel would be like an important message for people out there who have experienced perinatal mental health issues, either during their pregnancy, post-pregnancy, any stage of mothering?
Just want to encourage mums, whether you're pregnant or, you know, you've got a child, to recognize the signs and take action. Yes, I believe in days and spending them in bed if you need to, but if you need to do that for more than 2 or 3 days at a time, recognize those signs. And it generally, making small life habit changes and small tweaks can make a huge difference to living your life rather than just surviving. There's a big difference between surviving and thriving. And I think every child wants to see their mum happy and thriving, and every mum deserves to enjoy this experience being a mum, because like my eldest is 10 now. They grow up so quick. And, you know, before you know it, they'll be your best mates that you're going for lunch with and stuff and gossiping with and whatever you do. So it's, you know, look after yourself in that time and do whatever it takes to do so without guilt or shame. Because it's having these types of feelings doesn't make you anything, it just makes you human. And you know, you deserve to be happy. Every mum deserves to be every person deserves to be happy, but every child wants to see their mummy happy. And I think it's super important to do whatever it takes to be that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Lauren.
My pleasure.
So I will also be sharing some resources within the community as well from panda.org. So they are the ones who are acknowledging this National Perinatal Anxiety and Depression. So they have a helpline. So we'll put some information in the comments below this video. I'll put the link to Lauren's Instagram page. As I said, she shares some beautiful, genuine, heartfelt posts and information. So really do connect with her. And thank you so much for your time and your vulnerability and for your wisdom this morning, Lauren. Thoroughly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.